our chapter liaison in California, sent in a really good question that I thought would be a great one to kick off today's discussion. And she writes, other than addressing COVID-19 related changes, what are ways to move projects forward that require some field work, engineering, and design? So I'm gonna just share that in our department, we've paused a lot of the field work and tried to do virtual field work as much as possible. But if there are certain details that still need further verification, we're asking either the consultant to provide that to us, the applicants, or if we do go out there, it's a very controlled environment where we're social distancing and wearing lots of protective face coverings and gloves and things of that nature. But I'm gonna open it up to what you're all experiencing and experimenting with. Anyone?
So I'll jump in, Robert from Texas. So I have to jump off in like 5 to 10 minutes. So sorry about that, everyone. It's kind of interesting. We have several ongoing construction contracts that we manage, and some of our construction firms are continuing. They just said we're just going to continue because we think we're an essential service, and that's still in Texas being debated. And the people that are the construction companies are winning because they're just out there and there's not much enforcement. So there's that. And then there's some firms that just aren't. And then what we've done in our office is we have a very small firm of 20. So we have 3 engineers, and they're in a couple different locations, but they're the only ones allowed in the office. And so we allowed our probably our most, I would say, technically needed staff in the office, and they're comfortable going into the office, but we don't allow anyone else in the office. So everyone else is working from home. And, we've been able to manage quite swimmingly. As a matter of fact, our CEO was like, oh, this could work long-term. And I'm like, I sure hope not. But that idea is being sparked, right? But it's been okay. I mean, it's only been 3 or 4 weeks. So I think that for us, and many of us planning in the planning field, our plans go on for 6-8 months. So it's like, my concern, I guess, is the next level, right? So we kind of had our plate full and we're finishing up those projects, et cetera. It's the next bit of projects that will, if this lasts for a long time, how do we as a consultant firm, I would say, continue to get work from folks like Gabriella, who's not showing up and the council's not showing up, et cetera. And so how does that next wave come, I guess, is really the question that I would ask. But, I don't have to worry about that until I have to worry about that. But that's where we are, and I would say overall we're doing fine, and people are still moving. We have a lot of transit agencies as our clients. That's where our bread and butter is, and they just got $25 billion, which was, there's actually so much money they don't even know what to do with it, frankly. I mean, to be completely honest, it was 4 times the annual allocation, and they just received their FY20 allocation like a month ago. So if you think about it, you basically just quadrupled or 5 times your budget. And so that's been a lot of extra work, frankly. But I appreciate seeing everybody. So I'll probably drop off in about 5-10 minutes, but good to see everybody.
Yeah, I'll just follow up on Robert.
Ahead,
oh, I'm sorry. Brian? Oh, well, I'll just jump in real quick. I'll just follow up on what Robert said. In Nevada, I'm in the Reno area, we're actually ramping up construction on some of our projects because all the businesses are closed essentially anyways, and there's not much traffic. So we're taking advantage of it and trying to get things done in record time, really. And it's been kind of a silver lining. I mean, it's not the situation we would want here, but since it is what it is, might as well take advantage. And so we're really cruising along in our projects, saving a boatload of money. And hopefully when everything's open back up for business, they'll have nice new sidewalks and streets and everything else. So it's going to be, we're kind of looking at it from a positive perspective.
I'll just chime in from here in Washington State. I'm nowhere near Seattle, by the way, but Washington State has been been doing a very good job of flattening the curve, as they say, but it has been really quite, harsh in how it's been implemented. So, for example, our state DOT has shut down all construction projects, and they're not even going to be doing inspections on local projects. So local cities and counties can continue their building on their projects, but they're still at risk for not having DOT involvement when they need it. And one of the big things around here is that in the housing crisis that we're in, the governor has deemed residential home construction as non-essential. So you can't build housing, period. And there are, I wasn't in the room, but I heard of discussions last week about what's going on with the different groups between the builders and the labor, talking about the implications of resuming construction, and there are actually the moral questions of, if you go back to work and you give people their protective gear to resume housing construction, are you taking protective gear away from nurses and doctors? Is the level of discussion that's going on with housing. And actually it affects us because we're in the middle of moving to a new building for the first time in 25 years as a governmental organization. And they can't finish the construction on our building. So we're feeling it, particularly intense just for ourselves.
I'll just make a caveat. So my department is in planning, but Metro, which is county, we have all these rail projects that have been funded, and there's no traffic, and Beverly Hills has shut down. So that's where we've had the most opposition with the Purple Line extension. So we're taking full advantage of that and we're going to actually complete the projects, not just on time, but early. Pause for emotion.
Yeah, I could chime in. I'm up in Bellingham, Washington, and I don't actually work for the city, but I just had a report from them, and starting today, they are going to start moving on their capital projects that are already in the pipeline, partly because the streets are so empty of cars and they have a lot of bike infrastructure that they had planned to be doing right now. So they're going to move forward with that. So that was a thumbs up.
I'm curious if Miss Ford Wagner can tell us how the Hawaiian projects are moving forward, since they've been trying to get their light rail off the ground. How's this sort of taking shape now?
What a good question, Gabriella. Actually, I don't know personally. Our state DOT is doing a lot of work while the roads are shut down. And it's a good time, obviously, to do road work. But our rail project is reporting that they're anticipating more delays, unfortunately. And I've only seen newspaper headlines, so I'm not sure why they're experiencing delays. But in general, Hawaii does suffer from kind of a knowledge drain. So I don't know if those kind of issues become even more exacerbated during a time like this. I can imagine our rail project is very much supported by the consulting community. So if the consulting community gets pulled to like live road construction projects, I can see that impacting the rail. But I haven't looked into it more beyond the headline. So you just reminded me that I need to do that.
So I got 2 points here. This is Jeff Schwein, and I'm in Northern California. One thing I notice is that people are a little nervous about the reduction in gas tax revenue, and certainly stimulus package or like the transit package is great, but it does throw a big wave in the regular cycles that we've been used to. So, I think part of this group's something that we could look at in the future over the next couple of years is trying to project what that impact is going to be for that reduction in gas tax revenue, which ultimately funds most of our transportation projects. The other point is that, you know, I kind of look at this as a positive. The city of Oakland last Friday shut down 30% of their roadways so people could get out and walk and have a safe distance away from each other. And there are other cities that I've read about that are recognizing, hey, now's a great time to take that third lane that we didn't need. And so, you know, if you guys have examples of cities where that is happening, they're putting in protected bike lanes instead of that third lane that wasn't being used or something like that, that would be helpful information to share amongst the groups so we could sort of show precedence for reduction in vehicle miles traveled and reliance on automobiles for our modes of travel.
Jeff, you know, Denver, I think, is one of the new cities that's totally taking advantage of that. I'm really curious. So our DOT and the city of LA has really been having a lot of heartburn about this because we can't stay inside. We have a lot of bad actors that just cannot stay indoors. And so we've had to shut down the majority of our parks. And, you know, even with the face covering mandate that's come down, there's still people that are out there not doing it. And I'm really interested. So we're not going to do it here. We thought long and hard, and we thought about strategic ways to do it, but people just can't behave and follow the rules. So they ruin it for everyone. But you know, I'm really interested to see how Oakland manages, because I think they would be a really great case study to see, especially being a larger city and being able to be effective at creating a very good community. So please share like how this goes forward. But we can't even hike together. We have to shut down all of our trails.
Yeah, that's completely unfortunate, and we'll see. You know, with Oakland's thing that they did on Friday, it's interesting because it contradicts what we're supposed to be doing a little bit. And then in the more rural areas, the sheriff's offices are posting on Facebook, "Hey, we don't mean stay at home. If you need some exercise, go for a walk. Just keep your distance." But obviously, it's a much different dynamic in an urban environment. So we'll see how Oakland does.
On a similar chain of thought as Jeff here, I've been wondering how the realm of autonomous vehicles is going to react to this change. For example, will people be as interested in a subscription-based model for AVs after this pandemic, or will R&D money still be in place for something that doesn't have a solidified business model moving forward? Or will we see it entirely shift in direction and see it go more towards deliveries, but the technology still being developed? I'm following the news closely, but if anybody has any additional insights on the prospects of AVs after a pandemic, that's something my regional entity is following very closely.
I did hear something actually about that specific point on a podcast, the Science Friday podcast, which that's not, you know, directly planning related. But there was a discussion that the AV community is moving more in a delivery of supplies, delivery of materials direction right now, instead of in a people moving direction. What I'm curious about is traffic data collection and how we're going to move forward on that. You know, my firm, we have a traffic data collection group, and unfortunately that's the only place where we've had to lay people off, because what sense is it to take any traffic data right now? It's not going to have any relevance towards what came before or what's coming later, and so there's no work for those folks at all. And I've seen an open debate going on, particularly, that the Maryland DOT is sponsoring about, well, what do we do about projects that need traffic data in order to move forward? And they've put forth various options like, we'll take old data and factor it up, apply an escalation year over year to get new data. I see you, Jeff. But I think the flaw in that is we don't know that when the all clear signal is given, and that's probably an overly simplistic way to look at it, but when the all clear signal is given and we all return to our normal lives, supposedly, we don't know how quickly the pre-existing patterns of life, including traffic, will come back to normal, or will they ever? And a lot of us probably hope that they won't ever return to that same trajectory they were on. But that'd be an interesting topic to foster a division conversation on, is what to do about forecasting traffic levels, both vehicular and ped bike and transit going forward. I read an article today that the metro system here in DC was on a tremendous ridership surge after several years of having to have shutdowns and major repair programs. The ridership was finally coming back. February of 2020 was up 9% over February of 2019, which from one year to the next, that's immense. And then now March was down on Metro Rail 95% over March of 2019. That's a crusher. That's an absolute crusher. I mean, they're saving some money on operations, I guess, but not 95%.
Well, and not enough to make up the fares.
No, God, no.
I read that car
Brian,
ownership.
I actually, my regional planning agency actually runs a region-wide traffic count program with about 700 counts, and we were 2 weeks into our every 2-year count, and we had to shut it down, and we're shifting the money to fall, but we don't know if we'll be able to use it. But the ripple effect is huge, because we also buy INRIX data for every April, the track that we use for our congestion management process. So now I got to figure out what to do with that. And in July, we're supposed to start a new metropolitan transportation plan with a 2020 base year, with, hey, we're going to have this INRIX data, we're going to have all of our new count data, and yeah, we've got to figure out all the ramifications going forward for all these different multi-year processes.
Well, you guys might have noticed that included in the e-blast was an article, was a link for the fact that INRIX is going to provide a traffic data profile showing the longitudinal pattern of the shutdown due to COVID-19.
They've already started providing data.
Yeah,
it's really quite interesting, because you can see exactly what day different metropolitan areas went off the cliff for traffic.
Well,
I think
Really interested to see the.
Or
Sorry.
Yeah, I think Nicole, did you have a comment?
Oh, I was just going to say, I've seen also that, I mean, in the US, it's already very car centric, but I've seen that in like South Korea, I believe they're seeing more interest in car ownership and like people buying cars versus taking transit, to your point about transit ridership going down. And then I imagine that I've seen similar thoughts here, where people are just seeing, single occupancy vehicles as safer in terms of virus transmission and public health. So I'm wondering how that will affect ridership long term, like this feeling of like needing to stay socially distant. Yeah. But at the same time, I've also heard from several people who travel a lot from work that their employers are now being like, well, maybe we don't have to fly you around the country, 3 days a week and send you to different places, and maybe you can just work from home.
Yeah, you're making some really poignant observations. So Korea's been kind of ahead of the curve in terms of the model country that's been managing the best at this pandemic, which is odd, but hey, who gets a gold medal this year for pandemic management? Yeah. And so that's new, exciting area to win, right? But I think the point is that we're going to have a really hard time knowing when we're back to normal, because the reality, I think, is that the best approach to this, until there is a definitive vaccine, is that people are not going to return all at once. It's not going to be a switch. It's going to be a very gradual slowing back into the world. And I think it's going to be a very cautious one. So like Los Angeles and California are such incredibly vital economies to the global success of our world that our mayor and our governor have to be mindful of this as they're going forward. And they've been incredibly creative and protective of our economy, in that they're having these conversations early on, or had them very early on, to redirect manufacturing into creating a different product that will help us with protective gear so that our economy can still stay afloat. And similarly, I think we're going to have the same circumstance with New York. I'm a Cuomo-sexual for sure. He's been wonderful to see the leadership that, you know, we just are going to have a completely different outcome of how we live. And to Nicole's point, is that employers are going to have to reevaluate the work structure, whether it's because of financial reasons or practical reasons, or just we need to be more globally minded in how we interact. And you know, that even I think will extend to APA, because I think that we're now so aware of climate change and global pandemics being something that are truly a reality because of our globalness, that we need to rethink these large conferences and how we operate them. So, you know, I think it's a really good opportunity for all of us to think about how MPC Home goes, and what are the lessons that we can learn from to make it still be very informative and still showcase each other's work and best practices and be able to learn from them and draw from them. But then how do we still make them interactive and human, where we're not just talking to our screens and living in too much of a virtual reality? So, you know, I think as we move forward, I think if you all can keep that in mind, so that we can all sort of jot down ideas and things that you see are successful, not as successful, and or morphing things that we used to do in a 3D world into a 2D world, but still be human. So we got another question courtesy of Nikki as well, and she's asking how have people been experiencing communities coming out and being a community in this pandemic? How are people kind of doing maybe tactical urbanism in their community? I think New York and Los Angeles, we started doing this where in Los Angeles at 8 o'clock, we have been clapping and cheering for all of our first responders. And bye, Nicole, thanks for joining. And just kind of giving them support, and just also like acknowledging that we still all live next to each other. So what are people seeing out there?
Gabby, how did you get that set up? Was that something that came out from like the government or a community organization posted on a public forum, or how does something that lovely start?
Well, you have to have a lot of friends. No, I'm just kidding. You become the TPD chair and then everyone follows you. No, I'm totally kidding. I'm not entirely certain how it happened in New York. I think it was literally a very grassroots organization, like movement, where people were, I mean, in New York, you know, you're living in a much smaller confine of an apartment. And so I think people started doing the, you know, sharing music and going out to their balconies and playing, or doing, you know, acting across the air shaft. I'm not sure exactly all the extent of their creativity, but really people were going stir crazy. And so they were beginning to take that outside and sharing it with the world. And I think that that was what sort of spurred the fact that, you know what, we can all decide at 7 o'clock, we're going to come out to our balconies and just start clapping and cheering them on. And so in Los Angeles, it kind of started the same way, in that, we weren't necessarily singing across the street to each other, but people were coming out to the sidewalks and at the same time, and they were doing like cheers and acknowledging the first responders that were out there. So it was a little bit of a need to get outside, because we've been indoors for 23 hours and it's probably good to feel air from the outside of our windows. And so on Friday of last Friday, it feels so long ago. It was just like 3 days ago. So Thursday of last week, our mayor like actually announced it during his daily address and was like, come out and support our first responders together. And then everyone started lighting up their municipal buildings in blue as solidarity. And I think that New York may have started the blue, and we just have we've carried on the blue because we're Dodger fans. We're awesome. Anyone else? Cities in the North Cal? Nobody's doing that?
Oh yeah, no, same thing at 7 o'clock here. The clapping in the neighborhood, it's pretty cool.
This isn't clapping in the neighborhood, but I can tell you as a person who is an avid walker, my wife and I walk our dogs, you know, multiple times a day, you know, on the weekends and every day on the weekdays. And it's interesting to see how packed the parks are. I live right down by the Columbia River, which is, you know, half a mile wide, you know, and it's actually, you actually have to make sure you avoid other people, because there are so many people now that are getting out there, that those of us that have been there, you know, every day for the last, you know, year and a half, we all look at each other and go, yeah, we're the people that were always here. But it's good to see everybody out there. And the only scary thing is that some people, they haven't walked their dogs in a really long time and they don't even know how to hold on to the leash. So it's you have to look out for some of the newbies.
So we've had people drawing things like on their driveways. A lot of the kids have made messages and different things for people out walking. And but our parks are kind of crazy busy too, and we've actually had to rope off the playground equipment to keep kids off of it. And it looks like a crime scene or something. Not overly attractive, but we've got a campaign right now with the greenways to I think the term is to be together-ish, and you know, kind of to keep some space between everybody.
Yeah, all our facilities are closed here in terms of like playground equipment, that sort of thing, but the trails are remain open. I think they realize that's about the only outlet people have these days, and obviously just use common sense, but they're being heavily utilized. And I just went with a hike with my family this past weekend, and we were able to fortunately find a parking spot, but and it wasn't like shoulder to shoulder by any means, but you know, you just kind of move to one side of the trail and let someone pass and say hello and go on your way. So yeah, if they do end up shutting down the trails, which I don't think they're considering, but I don't know, people are gonna probably revolt after that. So
We still have people having parties. So we have this really awesome dashboard of statistics. I mean, it's an awesome tool. It's not awesome data in that it's reporting all of the new cases and the deaths and where they're concentrated. And the Hollywood Hills is one of the largest concentrations, and it's because people are having these stupid parties, and I'm not sure exactly what it's going to take for that to stop, but I think it's going to be just a matter of time, because the common sense of like you swing around someone on the sidewalk when you're walking or in the park, it's like people don't apply this common sense. It's kind of insane. And I'm so I'm a civil servant in my department and in my city, and so we are all part of our job agreement was that we would be emergency or disaster service workers. And so we are being called upon to supplement the first line of employees that would perform a certain job duty. So one of the things that we've been now doing is that we are sort of the first line enforcement of any small businesses that are non-essential that remain open. We have to go out and cite them. It's weird. But if we, so I think the other thing, we're doing a number of other things. So we're helping deliver seniors that are housebound, well, just all seniors really now that can't get food or groceries on a regular basis. And then also we have set up hotels that are currently not being used for tourism. The hotels have, we've negotiated reasonable rates for people that have been exposed to COVID-19 in their non-essential, in their essential job roles and cannot isolate themselves at home from their family so that it's not contaminating more. So we assign them hotel rooms for 14 days. And so staff is assigned to those hotels to help make sure that they're, we basically are like a check-in counter for them, like the front desk, but it's like the COVID front desk at all these different hotels around the city. We're also doing a number of like homeless shelter supervision, and that's a hard job. But as people continue to not behave and respect the rules, I think we're going to have to be out there giving citations for people that are not wearing face masks and that are having parties when they shouldn't be. Is anyone else seeing this as part of what's happening in their city?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. Two are virtual. So in addition to my role as a transportation planner, I'm part of the avid cycling community. And two things have come up. One is that the local clubs are using Strava to share social distance routes, like things where you can bike off the normal trails so that you're not contributing to that proximity because the road traffic is down. They're saying, look, this is a safe road because the VMT has fallen, so go out there. I love that. The cycling networks on YouTube, even if you don't have fancy training equipment, are doing just YouTube videos that you can watch and participate in with a trainer inside your house, more so than they normally do. Usually involves fancy softwares and heartbeat monitors, and all of that's kind of gone, and it's becoming more accessible. So I'm hoping this helps make the cycling community maybe a little bit more inclusive, and also all year. So that's great. And then I've been noticing around the country people starting to use drones, and even recreationally on a volunteer basis, or I guess not volunteer, but on a kind of a collective basis to monitor people at trails. And they'll often, there was some group in New York that gathered and was giving people verbal warnings with drones, like, hey, you're not 6 feet apart. And so I'm not sure exactly what liability is if you're doing that stuff as a citizen, but it's just something that I've noticed. And it might have been handy when the cherry blossoms came out here near where I am in DC, because there was a significant visitation to the tidal basin, and they end up having to shut down the tidal basin, which is pretty unusual.
Yeah, I'm in New York, in Brooklyn, and the drones with verbal warnings. I know the FAA is looking into that now. So I think that got enough attention from at the federal level that it's like probably not going to be as much of a vigilante tool going forward. But who knows?
I could see people taking that way, way too far into telling their neighbors to shut up. It's a drone war. See, Star Wars is so ahead of their time.
Yeah, yeah, I think that one is very much a fine line.
So let's open it up to everyone else who's not, necessarily chimed in before or have some thoughts or anything they'd like to sort of pose as a question to the group.
I think I'll speak. So about the partying situation that's happening in Hollywood over there. So in Cincinnati, so I work in Dayton, Ohio, but I know in Cincinnati that there was a party, I think, Friday night, and it was posted. So it was in one of the downtown neighborhoods, and it was posted on Facebook. And then there was some person arrested for it by the Cincinnati Police Department. And now that their transit system, it used to be free and you can get to the back because of social distancing precautions. And now the transit authority says they're going to, I think they did scrap it. So I'm wondering how that's going to play out with other transit agencies.
What part did they scrap?
The free fares, because of
people using it to
using it for unessential services.
I think it might depend on how long this goes, right? And also if that's just a temporary approach that they're going to take before it really kind of begins to be a functioning part of the system once you have it up and running again. Mm-hmm. I think, I know that we all like to have certainty in the world that we operate within, but there's way too many factors for us to be able to do really good forecasting this early on. Mm-hmm. And it's hard because we're type A's and we like that control. But I think we're gonna have to learn to be a little type A- to get us through some of this, and sort of also understand that we're dealing with such an unknown. Like the Black Plague was like the last big one of this size pandemic that we could draw back to, and there was like no documentation because it was 1920 and the records are sparse and they're not, most of them burned in a fire somewhere, because at some point everything has burned in a fire since 1920 in this world. And I think, we're going to be able to source a lot of data from a sociological standpoint, from a technical logical standpoint, from a behavioral pattern standpoint. And I think, we'll get a lot of sort of economic trends. Obviously, toilet paper is the one that won this round for whatever. I still don't understand that one, but these are all mental choices that drive our choices. And I think it's going to really be a very strong commentary about where we were as a human population on this earth in this part of an economy that had been really low for a while, but boomed so quickly and took advantage of so much technology to get us there. So it's going to be very interesting to me to see how technology takes us out of this once we stabilize again. You know, I think it's going to be, it's really hard to predict. You know, we didn't see this coming and it came pretty fast, but there are certainly things that we know looking back already that we should have been doing. So I think we're going to be able to create a really good repository of the red flags we saw coming, but also a recentering of some of the not great habits that we had developed. And, you know, maybe single occupancy vehicle travel isn't the best choice, but maybe that travel pattern, the necessity to make that travel, to make that trip isn't necessary, because we're able to modify our work environments to be more green in that we're working from home more, you know? So I think this is kind of one of the really great opportunities to really make planning come through as the interdisciplinary field that it is, in that it's not just about the data, it's not just about the science, it's not just about making people feel good and warm and fuzzy. It's all of those things, and having a stable economy. Like, I think that's one of the things that draws people and more of us to planning, is the fact that it does really create a very true mirror of our society, and also a great opportunity to improve it. So we have about 5 minutes left, and I'm going to do a really quick but important plug for our transportation and planning, our transportation, state of transportation publication. Woo woo! It's a sneak preview, so screenshot this all right now. We're going to be releasing it, I think, on our annual business meeting, which I hope you can all join us for on the 27th. Is that right, Mackenzie? The 20-something. It's on Blur's Day, so put that on your calendar at wine o'clock. And hopefully you can all join us. I don't know if anyone would like to say any last closing words.
Yeah,
we were gonna just go ahead, Ted.
You know, I just work a little bit, and I work from home, and I've worked from home for 6 years, so this isn't any different for me. But you know, I get out every day. We live across the street from a state park, and there's a state highway. We cross the state highway to get to the state park. And I'm out on my bike, or I'm walking pretty much every day. I love the rainy days because very few people are out. And it's pouring today. But when I'm on my bike, it's so interesting. You know, I cross the state highway, I cross the interstate, and it's, where the hell are all these people going? Where are all these cars going? Where are they going? They're not going to work. You go to the store. Okay, you go to the store twice a week. You know, where else do you have to go? There are so many cars on the interstate. And I mean, I'm in an MSA, and a metropolitan statistical area, but it's not an urban county, really. It's like, where the hell are all these people going? Yeah, there's a lot of trucks going to Canada, great, you know, but they're bringing stuff. But that's the one question that's sort of burning in my mind. I go over the interstate and I see all these cars. Where the hell are they going? But I will answer your toilet paper question on one thing. Remember, before, most of the time you were at home, you were asleep. So you actually are using a lot more toilet paper. So I'll just
share
that. I'll just share that thought. But it's the cars. Where the hell are people going?
Well, it's mostly child schlepping related. There's lots of children's post-school activities that prompt a lot of trips, and it's why.
No, I mean now.
Oh, now.
I mean, like right now. Why am I seeing so many damn cars on the interstate?
Yeah.
Where the hell are people going? It makes no sense.
The Los Angeles traffic maps on peak Friday was green. There was like one spot that was yellow, and I think that's going to be like a poster that's going to be, you know, on mugs. It's going to be like on T-shirts. It's going to be like the new meme.
The air quality too. But but anyway, that was my thought. Is I just don't know where the hell people are.
I think a lot of this data, I don't know where the cars are going either. I'm seeing it here when I very rarely go out. But the data that's going to come out of this will be frustrating for all of our modeling activities and all of our funding forecasts. It might be really good for helping us make any sort of environmental pitch or alternative mode pitch. And so I'm trying to, you know, not flippantly so, but be optimistic about this potential treasure trove of, I knew it. I knew that teleworking could actually help the environment. You know, those kinds of things, and making the business pitch. So there's one teeny little bit of positive. I'm sorry, I have a pet bird. My bad.
Well, and the good news is that a lot of people have remembered how to ride a bicycle as well. As an avid bicycle rider, I'm happy to see other people out there too. And if it helps the safety of everybody, I love it.
Yeah, you know, I think one thing that I'd like to see APA really help us push forward on is NEPA and the environmental standards that still need to be put in force. Thank you very much. That's totally something that, okay, there's a long list, who am I kidding, that we need to get new administration for, but you know, I think it's a great opportunity for APA to be one of the leaders in forcing the envelope to make NEPA be far more impactful and something that's truly, you know, banking on what Mackenzie shared and highlighted, that these things are standards that can actually improve our quality of life. And so I think, you know, as far as I can advocate for it, and I think coming from members as well and your chapters advocating for it as well, it's a great platform for us. As far as I know, the legislative policy day on the Hill is still on, but who knows? But that's always a really good opportunity for planners to advocate for really good policy and legislation. So keep that in mind. Any last thoughts from everyone? You can all unmute yourselves.
So I'll just say one more thing. Looking at Missouri, I just pulled up our ozone numbers as of yesterday. And St. Louis, who struggles every year, even by just 1 or 2 points of getting out of non-attainment, is lower than some of our outstate. So they are hopefully really actually staying home.
Yeah, I'll just say we were on the edge of going into ozone non-attainment, and last year our State Department of Ecology was like working with us to try to keep us from going off the cliff here. And we did a public information campaign that our agency ran it for our whole region, and now our state agency hasn't even called us this year because we all know the data is going to be great this year. So that's awesome. That's a blessing.
That's your meme. That's your t-shirt and mug printing that you're going to put out.
Yes, we're still attainment.
Excellent. Take them while you can.
That's right.
So Jamie, I think we're going to do a follow-up exit poll. There we go. Please vote.
Can we click on all of them?
I think you can.
Oh, there's an all of the above.
Oh, yes, all of the above.
I'm really happy I
Oh.
brought this one map home from work, so I look official. I brought one map. That's all I got.
Okay, here I'll go naked here. There we go. All right. Nice.
All right.
Switch it back.
Excellent. So thank you all for being part of this little experiment we call virtual happy hour. And I think we're going to be looking to see how many more people found it enjoyable and useful. We'll probably do a more formal follow-up poll for everyone that did actually participate today. And then we'll see you hopefully on the 27th, Blur's Day, at 1 o'clock for our business meeting. So stay safe and stay healthy and have a great week, everyone. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Stay well, people.